I'm working what's called the Robbery Assistance Program, and we're working for a Canadian bank, very large bank. And what they generally do is they would position us in a back room as sort of a reassurance after a robbery had happened. Most times, if somebody got wind of a robbery that was coming towards a bank, they would be actual cops with shotguns, etc. And the Toronto police have a robbery squad for exactly those moments. And so we were generally not flippant about it, but we were, kind of easygoing about it. And we were very, very quiet. We didn't drink a lot of coffee. We just sort of came in, sat in this room in the back, monitored what was going on, and watched the video feeds. And I went to the washroom at one point, which was a separate door. You had to walk through the back area where the tellers were. And imagine my surprise when I came back out and there was a young man with a mask pointing a shotgun directly at me. And I hadn't heard a thing. I don't know how. I didn't hear a thing while I was in the bathroom. And you can make all the jokes you want about that one. And it's good. Humor helps blow some of the tension off, even if it's sometimes a little less than appropriate. Leave people alone after a stressful situation. If they say inappropriate things, that's okay. Let it go. Roll off your back. And he racked the slide. I guess he was trying to show that he was serious or whatever have you. And he did it like in the movies. And he racked it. And I remember thinking, oh, good, one round less. Because when they do that, a round flies out the ejection port. They just deprive themselves of a shot. And it's amazing what your brain thinks during that moment. And I remember looking at it and saying, oh, that's a Mossberg. That's a good gun, And he all of a sudden snapped to and go, oh, holy crow. And what we're trained for is we're sitting in a classroom and we're listening to the robbery squad guys. And they always say, don't shoot your hands in the air. Because if you do that, you're going to scare him and he's going to shoot you, And we always just kind of chuckled at it because we always thought, well, yeah, that's going to happen. We're there after the barn door's already closed. And it turns out this guy came back to the branch for a second crack at it. And we just happened to be there. So all of a sudden I have this, and it's funny, they joke, in books and the movies about, the gun looking like, a train tunnel when it's pointed at you. And wow, it did. It looked like a black hole. It was just this huge thing. And I'm kind of dissociated at that point, which I guess is my self-protection measure. And I'm trying really hard not to think about what's actually in front of me here. And all I can think of to do is just, okay, all right, you're in charge. So, I'm just kind of looking at this shotgun and I remember thinking, oh God, his fingers on the trigger and he's shaking. You can actually see the barrel of the gun jumping around. And I think that scared me more than anything. This guy might just do something dumb out of fear. And the next thing I remember thinking is, I hope nobody pushed the robbery alert button because the last thing I want is to be sealed in here with this guy. And I don't remember doing it. I just moved to one of the drawers and I said, what do you want? And he said, everything but the last bill. Turns out this guy knows his robbery skills pretty well because there's an alligator clip at the bottom of, I'm not giving away state secrets. This has been in the news numerous times, where the last 20 in the right-hand corner has an electrical contact, and that electrical contact is separated by the bill. And the moment you pull that bill, you would only do that if you were trying to summon the cops in a hurry. And the silent alarm goes off. It goes to a security company, which alerts the alarm monitoring company, which alerts the cops. So it does take a few minutes. But the moment that bill is pushed or the button at the cashier's knee gets pushed, that's it. SWAT team's coming. It's going to be a movie moment. And I remember I hope this doesn't turn into a movie moment. And I very carefully started packing the bills on the counter. And I said, have you got a bag? And I remember thinking, what What are you going to ask him next? Paper or plastic? You know, and thinking, you're an idiot. Shut up. I finally just regained my senses and went back to my training and said, what would you like me to do next? And he started waving the shotgun around at people. And I was like, no, 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 no. Don't look at them. Look at me. And my hindbrain is screaming, why would you want him to do that? But it's what we're told to do. And when you're sitting in a classroom, it's really easy to sort of accept that and say, yeah, that's a smart thing to do. That's great. That's bloody heroic. That's awesome. When you're really doing it in that moment, and maybe he was in there for 3 or 4 minutes, and he just started reaching over the counter, scooping the cash. There was no plexiglass barrier at that point. It was just open face to face. And he started reaching over and scooping the cash, and little bits of cash are going everywhere. And my dumb hindbrain again goes, hey, you could use $50. And I'm thinking, shut up. Like, stop talking to me, because I'm going to say something stupid. And, the next thing you know, he's out the door, gone. And all I can think of to do is look around and go, is everybody okay? Everybody all right? This is before cell phones or anything like that. And, before they were really prevalent anyway. Some people still had the flip phone at that point. And all I could do at that point is that's all I could say. I lost the power of speech. Thank God I had gone to the bathroom beforehand, because I'm pretty sure I would have wet my pants. And there's no dishonor in me saying that. I was absolutely terrified. And one of the tellers looks up from the floor and she goes, aren't you ever scared? What's wrong with you? And I just kind of looked at her and I said, I need to sit down. If you think I'm not scared, you're choice word kidding. And she was mightily offended by that. She was really PO'd at me. And for some reason, she chose to fixate on that when the cops came running in and, you guys got a robbery? I'm like, yeah, he's gone. Anybody see direction of travel? No. Well, what good are you then? One of the cops said to me, and his partner turned around and said, knock it off. What's wrong with you? And then the kerfuffle was absolutely nuts. At one point we had somebody, I don't know, some high-ranking cop, and I don't remember, but he had a whole bunch of maple leafs on his shoulder that were gold, and white shirt and a very resplendent hat. And, he was bent over me asking me a stream of questions. And I said, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. What do you know? I don't know anything. I just had a shotgun in my face. Do you mind? And I finally started regaining my senses when I fed myself a little anger and put my foot on the gas for a bit. And that's every reaction after a stressful situation is normal. That was normal for me. I'm going to react with some anger when somebody pushes me. Same as the teller looking up at me, wondering if I'm a complete psychopath. My partners are in the back, flat on the floor. Good for them. Good. I did not need them running out and trying to tackle this guy. First off, they'd have never got there. And this was an actual shotgun. They picked up one of his rounds, and later on I found out that they got a fingerprint off of the shotgun casing. And they were able to use it to identify him, and, I don't know if they got him or not. I have no clue. I never heard about anything in the news about an arrest. I probably just missed it when it was on one day. And I don't know what to tell you about that. Today, that program doesn't exist. And as management, I have to question the wisdom of putting that program in place at all in the first place. Why are you going to put essentially civilians, which is what security guards are, in that kind of a position? And I believe that bank in question now hires former cops, etc., and actually trains them to work as tellers in high-risk areas. So they have taken that responsibility away from us. Thank goodness, because that's a situation I don't ever feel like being in again. I've had a gun pulled on me a few times in my career, and it's not an experience that you want to have. I hope you never do. I hope you go through your entire career without even hearing anybody ever say the word gun, knife, anything else or otherwise. And you can tell that this still hits me pretty hard. It isn't, what you see in the movies where the hero grabs a nice long belt of whiskey, grabs the girl and rides off into the sunset. I got lucky. I got the girl. I'm married to her. We're nice and calm. We live in a beautiful little back split with a pool. There's no riding off into the sunset crap for this, And it took you a while, and I was lucky in that we had a pretty good counselor that I knew, and I was able to go to her for a year plus after that. And I didn't wake up screaming or anything like that, but yeah, on occasion, you'd see something in a movie, and it takes you back. And that's the definition of PTSD. When something suddenly transports you in a time machine and mentally you are for a second back in that situation, you're reliving your terror, your fear, and you are stuck in your body thinking, what should I have done? Do something is my common refrain to myself in the dream when I'm thinking about that. And you can't. You can't go back, and you really can't undo whatever you did. So whatever you did is good enough. Uh, and I've had people say to me, why didn't you grab the gun? Because I would have died instantly. Had I even made a grab for the gun, I wouldn't have even gotten my hand on it. There was just no way. You see in the movies all the time, people do all sorts of kung fu crap, and they have a gun pushed to their back and they, roll around and they deflect it, and they take it away from the guy. And even just play fighting with plastic weapons during training, I could tell you that probably 90% of the time when we tried that, we would have been shot. So hero stuff is vastly overrated. In life, most heroes are dead. Ask the cops what they train for. We're not going to train you for that sort of stuff, so please don't do it. Please don't accept those kinds of jobs. If they are by some miracle handed to you, please say no. That is an extraordinarily risky environment, someplace I should not have put myself in. But if you ever do find yourself in that situation, the training I received was actually pretty good as far as what not to do. Don't shoot your hands in the air. Don't make any sudden moves. Make sure that the person knows that they're in control. It's kind of like the golden rule, except in this case, it's the Gundam rule. The guy with the gun makes the rules, you know? I was very glad not to see cops uh, until he was gone. All I could think of was, please, cops, don't arrive while he's in here. I have no urge to be in the middle of a Wild West shootout. And I was thinking about what to do if they did arrive and he started shooting. I was just going to start yelling at everybody to run into the back room, into the vault. Uh, and I was going to try to shut the vault. And afterwards, I remember asking people, and they kind of chuckled, and they said, it takes a lot to move that, right? And I just sort of went, well, with 10 panicked people, I'm sure we would have managed it. And they said, yeah, it would have taken a while to get you out of there too. And I sort of went, well, it's bulletproof. So, we discussed this ad nauseum. We talked about it for weeks afterwards, and you'd mostly get this look from people. They're like, whoa, you've been in that situation, and they tried to stand me up, and they stood me up in front of the Toronto Police Headquarters, and they gave me a really nice award and called me a hero. And, I remember thinking, if you knew how terrified I was, you'd take that award and stick it someplace.